right now. All right, here we go. What's up, everybody? We got another episode of Coach's Compass coming at you. We got our guy Nick Leyden here today. What's up, Nick? How you doing?
Good, man. Yeah, so you want me to introduce myself right now
Yeah, just
for
a
those
quick
that
little
don't know?
introduction. Yeah, we can just go raw with this.
Yep, yeah, so my name's Nick Ladden, certified strength and conditioning coach. Been working with athletes for close to 10 years now. Former D1 football player and now current rugby player. Owner of the Peak Performance Program, which is an online strength and conditioning program for different sports, including rugby, MMA, basically anything that you want for more advanced athletes. And my passion's always been strength and conditioning because I was never the most talented and I had to work my ass off to get to where I was athletically in the gym and on the field. And I want to make sure that all athletes have the best opportunity with their training to help them reach their goals.
What's been your journey with what was your journey into strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so I mean, background, a little bit again, like high school football, all that, right? Like I was a fat kid, so I had to change that if I wanted to reach my goals of going to the NFL. That did not happen as I'm not playing right now, but I always dove into training to try to improve my performance on the field. That's how it's always been. I didn't really care about aesthetics or anything like that. The only thing that mattered to me was if I was better on the field. So training throughout high school, I got the opportunity to play D1. Like I said, football at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And then I got my bachelor's and master's in kinesiology there because I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach and eventually open up. One of my goals was to open up my own spots to train athletes. So, I mean, I just became a leader, like in the weight room and on the field. Within regards to our position. Again, it's like the same story. Like I didn't start in the beginning. It took me all the way up until my red shirt or my fifth year to be able to start, and I had to work for everything I had. And that's where I really fell in love with strength and conditioning. But the main kind of turning point for me in really trying to help athletes is I had our pro day, and I love my strength and conditioning coach, by the way. He did a lot of great things, so this is like no shade at him. He was awesome, right? But we went through the training and I performed poorly, in regards to like our speed, in regard like my bench didn't get any higher, like, just wasn't a great performance. And we were doing kind of all the typical things. All right, we were doing heavy strength training, we were going out and running acceleration, stuff like that. But I didn't see the improvements on our pro day and on the metrics, and that was kind of the trigger for me to be like, there's got to be more to this to help athletes actually transfer what they're doing in the gym to on the field. And that's really where a lot of this like passion and diving deeper into training philosophies and methods and things like that to support our athletes get faster and more explosive on the field really came to be. And then I started running with this and training athletes, and it's been a long but fun journey helping.
Nice. Well, that do you have a background with regards to like education from college in strength and conditioning or sports science?
Yeah. So yeah, kinesiology is just the like what would be sports science, exercise science, basically.
Yeah.
So I got my bachelor's and master's in both of those.
Okay. Nice. And what was your
And then
path like after college? Like, did you go straight into internship or?
I did my internship in my well, we had one for my graduate studies. I did like a year and a half, 2 years almost, and then actually immediately after college, I took a job doing like facility operations within a recreation center. So completely different kind of field. Like it was out of the fitness field for a while.
Yeah.
I did that for about 2 years, but I got the itch to like help athletes. That wasn't pulling me towards where I wanted to go. So then I went back and helped my buddy run a gym, started coaching, personal training, did that for about 3 years or so. And then after that is when I started training online and launched what is now Peak Performance and our current business. Yeah.
And what like so with regards to like your knowledge in the field, if we were to kind of like reverse back in your journey, where did you kind of go for with regards to like insight and knowledge within the field? Like who were those people that you kind of picked from? and with regards to kind of like your philosophies and methodologies?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a ton from our strength and conditioning coaches, Chris Holder and Chris White. I think he's at De La Salle, and then Chris White was at LSU for a while. So I learned a ton from them during that internship, and just honestly, like being an athlete, like throughout my time there is when I was in kinesiology. I was studying it, so I was then hands on, asking questions. After I spent that 2 years I was in facility operations, every day I was reading research articles, and I was reading different articles on, sports performance or increasing muscle or increasing strength, and then I was actively applying it. So I would read something, I would build out a training program, and I would do it for the next 4, 6, 8 weeks. And I did that for 2.5, 3 years of just continuing to like learn and then self implement and see, okay, this worked, this didn't work, and then continuing to refine. When it comes to people who have like specifically, I mean, I'll shout out Les Spellman for sure in terms of speed development. Like he taught me so much and opened my eyes to a lot, because in college and in strength and conditioning, like you don't learn about speed, or at least when I was there, they don't even touch like really speed development, maybe agility, maybe some conditioning, but from the technical aspects of speed development. So he helped a ton. There's, learning from like Louis Simmons, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say there's one, because I've just been for like 4 to 5 years, I was just absorbing from so many different areas and testing and then coming into my own. And then after those years, started to put together a system and a formula based off of what I found to have the greatest impact and best results for myself and for our athletes, and just continue to refine that process.
With regards to programming and like coaching, like I've had this argument recently, and I also talked to Coop about it, but there's that journey within like strength and conditioning, and sometimes you get into the field and you go straight into college strength and conditioning, and you're pretty much, once you start to get into your own role, you pretty much start to like regurgitate your own information, like information that you've heard from other college strength coaches. And with you kind of going into more so taking your own lead, stepping into where you're at, like how do you what advice do you give people on bridging the gap between being a good coach? Because I feel like you see a lot of guys that just like, he's a good coach, but like doesn't program quite well, and like some guys that I currently work with guys is just like their programs are excellent, with regards to bridging the gap for athletes, but like with regards to coaching, it's not all together.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely some skills you have to be able to coach, right? Like you have to be charismatic, you have to be confident, you have to inspire and motivate. And I mean, honestly, sometimes you got to be a hard ass, right? Like you got to have those communication skills to be able to, because you can have the best program in the world, but if you can't communicate it and get your athletes to understand why you're doing certain things, it doesn't matter. They're not going to dive into it fully. So you have to have some leadership qualities when it comes to being a coach. I mean, obviously you have to care about the athletes, in regards to helping them improve. So you have to develop those skills, so like, if you're not good at public speaking, I would highly recommend you start putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to be able to do that, and really develop those skills. Because at a certain point, that's almost more important than the actual programming, right? Like if you can motivate your guys and get them going, right? Like you could have a suboptimal program, but if you're driving intensity through your coaching, you're going to get better results and elicit better results for those athletes. But, in terms of coaching, this is kind of off topic, but you have to develop like a coach's eye and awareness for what's going on, because you're managing, like, I don't know, when I was a strength and conditioning coach at Chaffey College, there'd be like 60 guys in there, and it's like you have to be able to identify who's slacking off, what technique needs to be improved upon, where if we're doing 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps, 85 to 90%, like are those athletes actually pushing themselves by being able to look at the intensity and effort they're putting out? If they're not, you go talk to them and throw some weight on the bar and make sure that they're achieving the results and desired inputs, that you're trying to achieve. And that stuff comes with developing like culture, expectations, and then holding people accountable to it, right? So that's like the coaching side of things. So in terms of programming, I think you need to have a philosophy and you need to have a certain system and guidelines that you're progressing people through and have a plan for these athletes, but also be adaptable because you could build the best plan absolutely dialed in, but then this happened with me when I was at Chafee. It's like, we're going to run this, and this. And then you get in there after the first week and you're like, shit, like we need to regress this way back. So you got, it's like these guys don't even know how to work hard yet. So like, we need to like get them to learn what intensity is and, how we go about doing that. Or, if these guys are like super deconditioned, they can't handle certain things. So you got to be adaptable and open-minded, and you got to be able to change on the fly a little bit, but still hold true to the overall concepts that you're trying to achieve in terms of like program design and eliciting the adaptations that you want.
And you spoke to like culture, especially like what does culture look like in like the private sector? Because, like you have people that are paying a price to work out there. So it's not like the college kids were just like, get with this culture or get lost, So how does that usually work with culture building in the private sector?
I mean, that's why I got out of Gen Pop. I couldn't do it, dude. Like, I had to have two different modes. Like, it was like, okay, this is Gen Pop, and this is like fitness and like weight loss, build muscle. And, with those people, obviously, I'm not like, come on, and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's a totally different game. But, when I have my athletes, like, what's great about the athletes that come to you for, kind of the private sector, personal, that sort of things, like they're bought in. They have a goal, they have a desire, right? You're not having to pull as much teeth with, I'm like, hey, come on, let's do this. Like they're usually pretty bought in, and you're just setting initial expectations. Like, hey, this is going to be tough. I'm going to ask a lot out of you. You need to show up 15 minutes early. Like I'm trying to help you reach X goal. So this is what's required to make that happen. And this is what we need to do. So that's pretty much how I set expectations. And then it's the only way you hold expectations is the accountability that you see day in and day out, right? So if you see a standard slip, you have to address it, like, hey, could you have ran faster right there? Yeah. Okay. That rep doesn't count. Let's do it again, right? Like simple things is how you hold the standard. And then that goes back to your coaching, right? Like that goes back to you being present. I think that's probably the biggest thing with coaches. They're not present all the time. And when you're not present, you let things slide, and you let too many things slide, then culture starts to diminish. It's hard to bring it back, right? So it's making sure that you're staying on top of it. In a team aspect, it's honestly, I think it's harder to build initially depending on what you're coming into. But once you get those few role models, right, and like few leaders, and they start holding the expectations and standards, then it becomes a lot easier because when it comes from an own teammate, granted that teammate needs to actually be putting in the work and doing like working hard in order for the words to stick. And to a degree, they also need to be performing on the field. But when you have that, it also holds a little bit more weight, I believe, than the coach, because the coach is always going to be seen as the guy who's just harping on you. But when it comes from a teammate holding you accountable, like, I don't know if I can cuss on this podcast, but, I'll try to hold off. Okay. So for example, we'd have conditioning drills in our D line when we were in college, like whatever it is, like if someone didn't touch the line, like there would be 3 or 4 guys like, hey dude, touch the fucking line, you pussy, right? Like that's the words that would come out. Yeah. And you'd be like, shit, so that self-accountability was more than, if the coach was like, hey, get on your ass and, tell you to do it, you're like, okay, got it. But like when it comes from your own teammates, it holds a lot more weight. But I think it's the coach's job to like identify who those leaders are and then try to develop them and start to bring them up so then they can hold the standard for the rest of the team.
Totally true. What do you call it? Going back to the statement you made, and I thought about it because I vividly remember like in my past doing it so much, but like you create this great program and then you have an athlete come and then you're just like, this is not for this athlete. Like we need to take a million steps back. You have to trash the whole program, and sometimes like you start to like internalize it, and you're just like, God bless, am a fucking good coach? Like why would I do that? Thank God I don't do that as much anymore. What is your onboarding process look like for athletes that come to train with you to make sure that they usually hit the ground running?
So, in person or online, it's kind of the same process. Now, online's a little bit harder in terms of getting people to do what they want, what you want, right? But typically, I'll go through, we have the conversation, we set their goals, what they need to work on, we define the timeline, right? Stuff like that, like what equipment they have. I'm speaking from more of an online perspective, but the same thing occurs in person. And then I want to get some data metrics on them. Now, I don't have super fancy equipment, but we still do what we can, right? Like I want to know 3 to 1 rep maxes for some big lifts to get general strength and force production qualities. I want to get some power outputs, whether it's vertical, broad jump, things like that. I want to get 10-yard splits. I want to get fly 10s for top speed. I want to get agility times. And typically I want them to film, or I'm watching them all. And I even film when it's in person, so I can then go and look at like, mechanics for sprinting or technique for some of this stuff. Now, obviously, like the 1 rep max stuff, like I'm going to get some other technique stuff, and we're going to be a little bit safe on that end in terms of, if they are not accustomed to it. But then based off of that, I can get more of a framework around, okay, this athlete says they want this, and this, but where they're actually lacking is here, right? So we need to address some of this stuff. Or so it's just a big kind of data accumulation to be able to assess, okay, does this athlete need more force production? Do they need more speed development? Do they need more power output? Like some of those things, do they have any mobility issues in their hips or shoulders, or, what sort of injuries have they dealt with in the past? And then, you take that into consideration. And then I start to build out a plan for them. And then usually if it's in person, I'm just building out like a 1 to 2 week plan. I'm like, hey, we're going to run through this. I'm going to watch you and see what's going on. And then I'll put together the real plan after that. If it's online, one-on-ones, it's sort of the same process. I'm building out a plan to meet their goals, where they're at, and then building out a more in-depth kind of plan after we get some feedback from it. But like for my peak performance program, those are set plans that I help make adjustments on. That's like our lower ticket model. It's like, hey, here's the program for more advanced athletes. Like I'll help them select which plan to get started on. And then I will go through it with them, explain the plan, and then explain like adjustments that they can make to run it. And then the really good members, they're sending me the videos, they're sending me technique stuff, they're getting feedback that way, they're booking coaching calls with me. So we can help them out a lot more versus the ones that just like, give me the plan, I'll talk to you in 6 months. You're like, all right. Exactly. So
I actually with a friend of mine, I run an online training business as well, and like that does get difficult where you have guys that like don't follow the instructions. You have to message them and tell them that way versus the guys that do everything that they're supposed to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. What would you say are probably the biggest challenges right now with regards to the online training? Because I talk with friends a lot about it, because it's kind of like it seemed like after COVID, a lot of the strength coaches, especially in college, kind of figured out that, we're not making enough money. We need to figure out how to make money. So everybody's like, all these strength coaches are on like online strength and conditioning. And I think I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Keir, like as though Keir William Flat. He runs like he used to run the rugby strength coach.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like always been one step ahead, where I think he was always doing the online training thing, and then he started Strength Coach Network, which is kind of like he was serving strength coaches through like a Facebook type of forum. You would pay a membership, and then now he has a forum where he serves strength coaches and gives them advice on how to take steps to make a lot of money online. And sometimes I wonder just like, what is next? Have you ever thought, because sometimes I wonder what is next, because I know something will be next.
Yeah, I mean, and especially like as technology advances, like you just don't know. But I don't know. It's a tough question, because anyone, like a coach who's listening to this, may think like, oh, I need to be 2 steps ahead. In my I would say like, hold on, like you need to validate some proof of concept first, right? like cool, yeah, I'm gonna coach coaches how to coach, right? Like you're like, hold on, like you got to get results first with your you have a successful business where you can do some of that stuff before, which is part of the reason I haven't even dived into that area. I've been doing our peak performance program for 5 years now, and now we're like the last year and a half we've really started to pick up, and I'm like, okay, great. Some people have said like, why don't you like help? Because I get a lot of coaches reaching out to me and telling me like, hey, you've helped me out with your content and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I'll continue to put stuff out there, but I don't even feel comfortable starting to do like coaching coaches yet, because I would want to have a very successful business so that I could help them more. I think I'm still in that place. Like, yes, I have a following. Yes, I have, a lot of clients and things like that, but I think you have to be really dialed in before you like take those steps to the next area. You have to, and like, yeah, I've been in it for 5 years, but it's been, maybe the last 2 where things have started to pick up. But there are so many lessons I still need to learn before I can be able to help people navigate that area. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of my like words of advice, I guess, for any coaches hearing this.
I
But
totally agree.
yeah,
Do you have any internships?
I've had people reach out. I don't want them yet.
Yeah. No, totally fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
It's
had
like,
the same thing where I've had guys that kind of want to come, and I'm still like in my journey of really trying to figure out my philosophy and my methodology. It's just like,
yeah.
you can kind of follow along or on this chaotic journey. Like, I don't think I have anything, set in stone, but
Well, I think what happens for people who want internships, right, is that they think it's like, oh, I'm going to program and coach athletes. And you're like, dude, that's like 15% of the business, brother. Where I need your help is XYZ, like, and that's
yeah,
none of the skills you want to learn. Like, so, like, do you want to be an online strength and conditioning coach, fitness influencer, whatever you want to call it? Like, it's very different.
Very true.
Like, yeah, you want to help me rewrite the copy to my website? Do you have copywriting skills? No? Okay, probably not a good fit. But yeah, I mean,
sometimes it does get difficult too, because like you want to stand out in this industry, or like especially within the market, and it does become so saturated sometimes. And some, like, even myself, where like when I log on to my sports performance, my Instagram site, I just combined with like, it's just advertisement after advertisement for program after program after program. And honestly, I have no idea whether these programs provide any value or not, but, and then for the most part, most athletes have no idea what's a good training program and what's not, genuinely.
mm-hmm.
So that does become like very challenging too, where it's just like, sometimes I feel like I may post something that isn't like the total truth on Instagram, just get a few likes and just to maybe get a few followers, to have some people come over and maybe get some conversions from,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, like, what do you feel about operating in that space, especially with like, content? And because I feel like a lot of strength coaches know, even the greatest ones know, that sometimes you'll post content that you don't genuinely believe in, because I mean, you only had a minute to explain what you wanted to say.
Yeah, I totally get that. And you always get people in the comments like, oh, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
like I had 35 seconds. Like, so, I mean, yeah, you're going to have to take some liberties in terms of how you present information, and it may not be, the most accurate, right? But I still think you need to be like true to yourself, right? Like, to a degree, you're just, if you don't, you're going to start to create, you're just not going to feel good posting that content, man. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
like, you got to separate, like, if you are purposely knowing you're doing it, and like, I'll say some shit sometimes to get a rile out of people, but it's not, I don't think I do it necessarily like to present misinformation. What I think you're saying is like, hey, do this exercise, it'll make you get explosive. And you're like, well, in a roundabout way, like, it'll increase force production of the lower body, which will then increase the total amount, like, so like, I know your thought process, because I do it too. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to help a certain way, because there's certain buzzwords, and to a degree, like, if you really want to help people, you have to stop and get their attention, which sometimes using these buzzwords and, hooks and things like that are going to help do that. But I think as long as you explain the information, whether like in a voiceover or in your description, and dial it out a little bit further, like, it's all good. But I know exactly what you're saying. And another thing is, like, you're saying being like inundated with just like a bunch of programs and things like that. Like, man, it is tough, especially when you're just getting started. It's tough not to be like, there's this banded thingy or this one-legged whatever. And you're like, like, that got a lot of views. Maybe I should try it out and post it and stuff. But I mean, I would always recommend that you try it before you post it and see if it actually gets results and if you're bought into it. Because what I think has helped me stand out, and it's not like I post like anything crazy that's like super, super different, right? There are certain methods that I use which are maybe a little bit more flashy, like dynamic effort and stuff like that, or contrast sets, which are, but if you don't have the conviction in what you're saying, like nobody's going to believe it. And I think that's one reason why I've been able to stand out the way that I have, is because like with my voiceovers, there's conviction behind it, and there's belief behind it, and there's energy behind it. And it helps resonate on a, kind of underneath level to help people get bought in to what we're saying. It's a consistency game too. I think people think like, oh, I'm posting this type of content, it's not getting a lot of views. Well, like I didn't really start to see growth on my page until I was like 900 posts in, So like there's effort and refinement that will happen through making thousands or, hundreds and hundreds of posts, which you'll get better and better and better at.
Totally true. Like, because even just like what you were saying, where there's sometimes where I may post something and I'm just like, that's really not the total truth. I mean, but if you gave me a blog, if you get the whole blog to write something, I could write a whole blog about this, because it's just like, you may something like to increase power, but it's just like power is such a general term. And,
it is.
and then it's just like, you're like, oh, I don't feel like I should say this. Or like, I want to say like, use these 5 exercises to increase speed, because you see it all the time. And I'm like, damn, that shit just got 1 million likes.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, again, like, so it's like, who's your audience? So I don't see that as being like, I don't know, dishonest, right? It's like you're saying 5 exercises to increase speed, and it's, maybe there's not one that's directly speed related or something like that. Or you're like, in a roundabout way, it'll create speed. But like, people don't know the finer details. The people aren't, you know what I mean? It's not like, if you're like, hey, we're using this to increase ankle stiffness and the quicker ground, like sometimes if you go too far into the weeds with like higher level type of words and knowledge, like it just flies over people's head, right? And then they don't understand what's going on. So you have to remember and talk at a level that they can understand, so that's, unless your audience is strength and conditioning coaches who would know that sort of stuff. So you have to speak in the language that the people understand. And again, that kind of goes back to coaching. Like, I may not say we're targeting these specific qualities in this specific region to help with this. I'm like, dude, if there's an athlete, I'm like, do this shit. It's going to help you get faster. They're like, got it. Like, so sometimes you have to speak at the level that they understand. So that they can understand it.
So with regards to your programming, like, if we were to just dive into programming a little bit, what do your progressions look like with, like, let's say like some of the athletes that you have, or some challenges that you have with some of your athletes?
I can give you like the rundown if you want of typically like how it runs. So I train through what I call the 6 pillars of athletic training or athletic development, right? So strength, power, speed, agility, kind of 3 in 1, which is like mobility, stability, coordination, and then conditioning. And then each of those have their little like subset things, right, that you're trying to improve. Like speed, it's acceleration, it's top speed, it's mechanics, stuff like that. So those are the things like I'm always thinking about as I'm like building out training plans. My typical progression, this isn't the exact order that it goes for every single athlete, depending on previous training history, if they have a fight coming up or if they're in season, stuff like that. But typically we're laying a foundational phase, which is like your GPP phase, right? And I should say throughout all of this, I'm a proponent of concurrent training. It's not like, hey, it's only strength, it's only power, it's only speed. So I think like my programming has kind of morphed into this like concurrent block sort of periodization that we go through, where we're using some different, methods at certain times to get certain results, right? So typically we're doing like a foundational phase, and I have a few different like categories of, what that foundational phase looks like. So like sometimes it's a little more advanced than like a beginner foundational phase, someone who's gone through a couple times. But with that sort of stuff, generally it's like base levels of strength, movement quality. We're preparing the tendons and joints to handle higher impact forces like regress plyometrics, landings, ankle work, stability work. And then there's a little bit of like work capacity and like muscle building that goes into it. Next phase of training, we start to get into a strength and power phase, or depending on I have a full year-long rugby program I'm building out. So this one's like, I'm taking a lot more time. So I have like a pure strength block, but typically it's the strength and power block where I'll use some concepts of conjugate, basically just max effort and dynamic effort. And then I'll do some cluster sets in there as well on our like max effort days.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depending if it's like for a little bit more advanced athletes, I might do some like contrast style stuff. But I think the more sort of methods and things that you implement, the more dialed in you have to be with like total volume and things like that. And I've recently been starting to pull back a little bit on some of that stuff, and just drive a little bit more intensity. So, with that, we'll do basically, warm up, some a little bit more advanced plyos. Then we'll get into like our cluster sets for our big work. And then we'll do some like accessory, either unilateral or stability or kind of hypertrophy stuff, maybe a little bit too. Dynamic effort days, same concept. We'll get into some plyometrics.
And you said, I know you mentioned you still have like a concurrent model. Like what, still making sure like even in that strength block that all those aspects of those qualities are kind of still there from the previous phase?
Not all of them. I would say so when I say like concurrent model, basically there's always going to be some sort of strength, some sort of power, some sort of speed in there. Like I won't always have hypertrophy in there, or I won't always have conditioning in there. But to some degree, there will always be some sort of strength, some sort of power, some sort of speed development that we're trying to keep. Because, I mean, if you neglect any of those, right, the others will start to falter, right? If you don't do any true strength training and, you're not touching those high numbers, like your overall force production is going to decrease and your power output is going to decrease and probably your speed a little bit, right? So that's what I say when I'm like concurrent model with that stuff. Then what I found for more advanced athletes is that in younger athletes, you can get away with just like strength, power, speed training, right? Just like get it, heavy loads, moving fast, some plyos, stuff like that. What I found for myself and for a lot of like older and more advanced athletes that are really trying to get that like, 1% to 2% more the explosiveness work, then I'll start to implement some like VBT based stuff. Like bar speed stuff, where I'm really trying to focus on some specific qualities, like in our like power speed phase, where it's like, hey, I want like fast eccentrics, and I want to like focus on like the amortization phase, and like I want these certain bar speeds hitting.
Personalize that for sport or athlete, or
if they're a one-on-one client, yeah, or in person, yeah. But again, so I think I'm a little bit different on like the sport specific realm. I believe. Now, this is for like 90% of athletes, not all athletes. Like the more singularity, like the less qualities a certain sport has to produce, like the more specific it can be, right? Like a track sprinter, you can get super specific with their shit. But like a football player, you got to be big, you got to be strong, got to have agility, you got to have everything, right? So in order to make sure you're hitting all those qualities, it's going to be a little bit less specific, right? To a degree. I believe that if you just do a really good job of programming the qualities that pretty much every athlete needs, you're only really needing to have like maybe 10, 15% of some specific stuff. And typically for me, it comes down to like conditioning, like for the sport specific stuff, Now there are some things, right? Like baseball, you'd be like, they need a lot of rotational power. I mean, I would argue that like rugby in every sport needs some rotational power. Maybe not quite as much, but they still need rotational power, which you're going to have both of those, like, lateral med ball throws, things like that in both programs. So I have a hard time seeing a certain exercise as sport specific, as I view everything as like, what is the quality it's intended to produce, and do these athletes need that quality in their program? It's just an allocation.
I meant more so specificity with regards to VBT.
Oh, for each athlete?
For either athlete or position.
Gotcha. I mean, if they give me the data, yeah. If they give me the numbers in the beginning and they retest throughout it, yeah, for sure. Gotcha. Yeah. If I don't have that stuff, it's hard, to do. Really,
how do you do it for your online clients? We've recently been messing around with like some apps that we usually give our kids our online clients to mess around with.
Yeah. I use, like, if they have an iPhone, I'm just use the free metric VBT app, and then I have like guidelines for what they should be hitting on specific exercises that we have. So I just give them guidelines around there. And like, look, I don't, care about the weight. I care about the bar speed. Try to hit these numbers each week. Try to either go faster or improve the amount of weight that's on there. And then, but yeah, I mean, for in-person stuff, like I had a O lineman who was really strong, but like couldn't transfer force, was not quick off the ground. So for him, like I was like, hey, we're going to get some strength work in, but like a lot of our stuff is going to be around improving your central nervous system and like trying to increase how quickly your rate of force development happens and, things of that nature, which is, I was like, okay, hey, I was for him, yes, I was looking at bar speeds and stuff, but I was also looking like I would film his plyometrics and be like, okay, like your ground contact time is like 3.3 seconds right now. Like we need to get that down to, like 2.5 and then try to get a little bit more. And then, so for the in-person stuff, yeah, we definitely get like a little bit more dialed in based on what qualities they need for sure.
And what did that look like with him? Was that kind of just like, would you contrast that work? Would you potentiate it with like the dynamic work, or would that be a standalone, the plyometric work?
Sometimes, yeah. So, what I found for like the bigger guys too is that they will see, because you can get, post activation potentiation across a range. Yeah. For most literature, it's like heavy loads, right? Like compound movement, heavy load, but you can still get potentiating effects like even lower kind of in the percentage, like, 60-ish%. And still get that. And what I found, not only for myself, because I'm like I forget, there's like the cheetah, the gazelle, and the rhino. I'm like a rhino, right? Like I'm like the force guy, not very elastic. So for those type of athletes, what I found is that doing some sort of like dynamic effort, banded based work where maybe the load's lighter, but you're getting them to move quicker in and out of eccentric to concentric and then taking it into a plyometric, they see a better performance and they start to learn how quick to move their body because they're getting like reps in it beforehand, right? And some of our faster athletes and stuff like that, like they don't need that stuff and they're force deficient. So I'm like, no, like, yeah, we're hitting, 3 reps at percent. You're trying to lift it as fast as you can, and then we're going into, a plyometric.
Resources do you guys have at hand, and like for your in-person stuff?
What do you mean,
You have
like
a
resources?
force plate, gym aware.
I don't have any of that stuff. I have an iPhone.
Okay.
This is what I have.
Yeah. So, hey,
iPhone and tape measure and some cones.
Just as good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, we're gonna film your fly 10. I'm gonna edit it down and look where you cross the cones and stuff like that. But yeah,
I don't have a ruler on the iPhone that you can use.
Yeah, dude, I feel like we've used that. Like I said, we're getting it done. We don't have some of that fancy stuff. I would love to have some of the other stuff. I've used an app before. It used to be like My Jump Lab, where we could look at like RSI and stuff like that.
I had a problem with that. The one thing I had a problem with My Jump Lab was it's a measurement from like the iliac crest to the I think to your heel in like in a 90-degree squat, and you need to have that measurement.
Yeah.
I also work at a place in the city, Budapest. And I remember when I did the measurement on my own, I was like, and I did the measurement on my own with my own athlete, and I had him come in and do a test. And the lady that's like an anthropologist, she was like, yeah, that's totally wrong. That's totally off.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I just like gave up on it.
I know, like some of that stuff, like it's like cool, we can see some things, but it's, there's always going to be that like 5-10% error that's inherent in it. So I think just like being able to like view your athletes as well, you can kind of see, right? Like, oh, okay, like this guy's like stuck in the mud, he's still off the ground, like, and then that tells you, XYZ that he probably needs to work on. So at a certain point, your eyes become kind of your best friend.
No, that coaching eye, like you were talking about earlier, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm at the point where I can like look at an acceleration, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, your acceleration sucks. Like you need to work on XYZ, boom, 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 boom. You're, and then you compare that with like some of the data that they give you, and you're like, okay, cool. You probably need to have more of a strength block, or you need to have more of a like power kind of speed block, or, however you decide to program for them.
What does that look like for you building your coaching eye with sprinting? I feel like I've been robbed of that sometimes just because I've been lucky enough in Eastern Europe or over here in Europe, they're big on like GPS. We have like gym awares and are at the place, and we have force plates and I have like my own. I have like free laps that I use, and I think I've gotten away from kind of just like using my eyes to kind of analyze what I'm seeing.
So I think that's where like, yeah, I may not have had the best equipment but it's forced me to really like be able to take in a lot of data with myself and be able to view it. So just thousands of reps. I mean, and so for me, like I am not inherently a fast athlete. Like I was never taught how to sprint. I was never anything. So there's a lot of shit that's wrong with me. So before I started talking about speed training, I trained and was running for 2 years straight before and I would film every single, like I'd film the ankle dribbles. I would film the wickets. I would film my top speed. I would from different angles, like, and granted, I've gotten better, but I still have some flaws, obviously. And honestly, as selfish as it sounds, like I was trying to be faster for rugby. So I was like breaking my own shit down, like looking at other resources and be like, okay, like, God, like my hips here, or this here, my Jesus Christ, my lats and traps are too tight because I'm like, how I'm running with my arms and stuff. So for 2 years, I was just doing some self-evaluation, and then it made it a lot easier when when you're learning from someone who's not technically sound and improving. And then when you see like it becomes a lot easier. You're like, oh, it's not that bad. I basically had to relearn how to sprint. So that's helped me a lot in terms of like helping others. Because I don't think you could have got much worse from me. Like I used to hill strike. I used to do all that stuff, man. I was not great.
What are some of your biggest challenges right now in in-online and in person that you're facing and currently just like,
So recently I've got away from online from in person, unless it's been like a specific athlete who's reached out to me and I'm like, all right, like we can do this. But I'm like much more picky with those. Like there's certain time commitments, certain things that like need to be in place and for that to happen. And if they can't necessarily meet those commitments, then I won't take them on because I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste theirs for in-person stuff.
Yeah.
Online, you said like, what are the challenges?
Yeah. What are the challenges that you faced?
I think the biggest challenge for people is and for me is that there's been such just like years of like 6 week to abs, or, even the post, like get explosive with this workout or whatever. And it's like, it's going to take time. Like, it's just going to take time and there's no way around it. But all the marketing is that people want things fast. They don't want to this is why the fitness industry is challenging to market to, is because people to buy stuff, right? It's like, it alleviates a pain. They get immediate results. It's fast, right? Like with strength and conditioning and development, like you don't get any of those. You're like, okay, it's going to take 4 to 6 months. The improvements you're going to see aren't going to be crazy, depending on where you're at. So it's just getting people to understand that like, hey, this is a grind. There is effort, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you will see improvements. It's just going to take more time than you're accustomed to. It's going to take more sacrifices than you're accustomed to, but you're also going to get results that you've never gotten before. That's the hard part, especially when there's other marketers and other people that are, hey, in 12 weeks, you're going to get X, Y, Z, or 6 weeks, you're going to get this. And I'm like, okay, in 6 months, you're going to be here. It's a different story you kind of have to tell. But the thing that I've been seeing is that I think more people are starting to become aware of that, especially in the athletic space. Like, hey, the people that are saying, 8 weeks to this or 6 weeks to this, like, I think they're starting to realize that that's not like entirely true and that it does take a little bit of that. So I think there is some hope going in the right direction, but, I still deal with that. A lot of my onboarding calls, I'm like, hey, this is going to help you, but I recommend that you at least go and give it 3 months so you can see how the progressions work, how we're developing you, where it's going to get, right? Because a lot of athletes, they want to come in and they want to be like, oh, I want to get fast, I want to get explosive and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, cool, we can do that. And I have to explain to him, like, if you're force deficient, if your mobility sucks, if your stability sucks, like, yeah, you can go do all the fast explosive, like jumps, things like that, banded, whatever. But like, if you don't have a foundation, you're only going to get like this much results versus if you actually took the time to develop all the quality skills and structures that you need in your body, like then we can get this much out of it. Right. So it's like getting athletes to understand that is the hard part, especially when they want immediate results. So.
No, yeah. And it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, where it's like, you can sell your soul or you can be authentic to what it is that you're selling. Right. And I feel like that does get challenging. I feel like it does get challenging within the market. With it, I think it being so saturated.
Yeah, I think you just got to hold strong to your values, man. Like, to be honest, like in the beginning, when like I didn't have a lot of people in our program, I'd be like, like yeah, join, you know, like, because I wanted people in, obviously, you know, and I wasn't lying to them or anything, but now I'm like, dude, I don't think you're a good fit. Like if I talk to people and they are saying certain things and I lay it out for them, I'm like, hey, like, it's just not how it works. So like, I'm very upfront and honest now. Like, I don't try to like sell into anything. I'm like, look, this is what it is. Here's how it's going to be. This is what's required, but here are the results you're going to get. And if you want that, great. If not, you probably go find another trainer and then come back to me in like 6 months to a year, you know? So,
Yeah.
so
And I feel
it's
like
just long term.
and I like a lot of a lot of athletes too that are out here looking for online programs, and I feel like a lot of athletes in general are underdeveloped. They're underdeveloped and have no idea.
100%. And they all want sports specific shit. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, you need general qualities right now, brother. Like, you need general qualities. You don't need the Instagram Joel Seedman shit you see out there. Like, you don't need that.
I
Like,
literally just saw a video today earlier of like a trap bar offensive lineman doing a trap bar deadlift with like a neck attachment and him like
yeah, I
standing
saw the
up.
same one, bro. I
And I
saw the
was
same
like,
one. The
I don't even
combo
need to get a
moves, dude.
doctorate.
The fucking combo moves are rampant, bro. Fucking Bosu ball, reverse lunge, banded rotational baseball swing. I'm like, bro, like you're not hitting a heavy enough
Yeah.
stimulus or hard enough stimulus on any of those to get any adaptation. It's like, good
The
job,
more complex you
wasting your
make it, the
time.
less.
Yeah, I know. But that's that like dichotomy of like marketing versus like what works, right? Like,
Nah, good stuff. No, but
yeah, you
so
just talk shit on them, bro. That's what I would do.
honestly, that's what I tell my the co-founder that I work with. I'm just like, we need to get into just like fucking just commenting on these videos and talking shit. I was like,
Yeah.
maybe that is what we need to do to kind of like build a following. Maybe that's what it ends up being. But so our last guest, how we do it is our last guest will leave a question for the following guest, and then so on
Mm.
and so on. So the last guest asked, "Do you believe what we do matters?" And then you can answer that question. And once you answer that question, we'll leave your question for the following guest.
Do I believe what we do matters? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to do this. I mean, yes. So the reason I'm like so passionate, and the reason I spent so much time like trying to learn and evaluate and progress training is because I know as an athlete there is a small window of time you have to reach your goals, and who you place your trust in during that time is so critical because you can't get that time back, you know. And my goal as a strength conditioning coach is to provide our athletes with the best training that I possibly can to help them reach their goals. And I really do think it helps, and I really do think what we do matters in helping those athletes reach their goals.
Love that. If you need a strength program, hit up Nick. I love it. And then
Not beginners though, not beginners. I get too many people asking. Like I get so
if
many
you need a
like
sports
14, 15
specific
year olds that
program,
are
hit up
like,
Nick.
yeah, dude, I get like a lot of 14, 15 year olds that are like, hey, should I be doing this and this? And I'm like, no, like you need to do some simple 3x10 for like 3 years, bro. Then come hit me up. Like, you're not there yet, you
And
know?
we'll have you leave a question for the following guest.
For the following guest,
Yeah, for our
ooh,
next guest.
to be good. What is the biggest mistake or failure you've made in your coaching, and how have you overcome that?
Love it. Much appreciated. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the insight. Appreciate your
Yep.
time. Thank you so
Thank,
much.
thank, yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's fun.
No, much appreciated. We should definitely do this again. I may have to just chop it up with you on some strength and conditioning on the side. All right, man. Have a good one.